everybody, it's your friend Teese from Author's Note, Don't Like, Don't Listen. Last week we talked about Alpha, Beta, Omega / Omegaverse fanfiction. So this week we are talking about the lawsuit that surrounds Alpha, Beta, Omega and two women who have books that have claimed to be plagiarizing each other. So I just want to put out the same warning that we put out last week. A lot of the things that we're going to be talking about, even though we are talking about a lawsuit, Alpha, Beta, Omega is something that can be very triggering to people, and the context in these books include sexual assault, domestic abuse, violence, forced pregnancy, and even though it's not technically in these books, Omegaverse is inherently homophobic and transphobic, so we would rather you be safe than listen to us for a giggle. So please be safe, and if these things make you uncomfortable, consider just skipping these episodes. Your safety is way more important than any fandom history bit or podcast, you know? So if you are not okay with these topics, skip to the next one. If you are, enjoy this awful ride with us.
Welcome.
Hello.
Come on in.
Hi, Cass. How are you doing?
I'm okay, Teese. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I have a question for you.
What's the hot question this week, Teese?
What is the smallest fandom you've ever been in?
Ooh. I don't... Oh, no. Hold on. I'm trying to think about this.
Do you want me to tell you about mine?
Yes, please do while I think about this.
So mine was the... Oh my gosh, what was it actually called? I always just refer to it as the first name of the book, but I do know there is a proper name for this trilogy. But we are going for the books that good old Mr. Scott Westerfeld wrote, the Leviathan series.
Teese, you can't just use the podcast to recruit people into your tiny fandom.
Well, I mean...
I know you want content for it,
I would
but
love
Teese...
to... I haven't read them since, like, they finished being published, but I was really into the Leviathan books. They are a steampunk young adult book. So when I was like 14, I ate that up. When I was younger, I had a really big thing for zombies, like age 14, like to age 16-ish. And I mean, at the time, they were cool. It was fine. But now it's like kind of cringe thinking about it. So in turn, I got into some steampunk stuff because a lot of zombie books also included steampunk.
Which is a weird crossover.
I know, but it happened more often than you would think.
You know, it kind of makes sense, though, given the aesthetics. Okay. That doesn't seem as weird now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. And, like, the book that definitely really hit me to get crossover was Bone Shaker by Cherie Priest. And I guess that was also a really small fandom for me, too, because I only knew one other person who read them, and I really, really loved them. There's, like, 3 or 4 books in the series the last time I checked, and it was really important to me. I guess. It was like my favorite book for a really long time. But anyway, Leviathan surrounds, it has like all the things teenage me wanted. Like it had a girl posing as a guy, which I guess the transgender trumped out, you know. But there was that, and there was like espionage, and there was international scandal, and there was like really cool pseudoscience steampunk stuff in it. And it just was like a really well-written story to like my high school mind, and there was art in it, and I love a young adult level book that still has art in it. Like I love the flavor of it. Like even if there's like a map, I'm like, ooh, a map. And
illustrations.
Yeah, and I really, really loved the Leviathan series, and like I remember scrolling through Tumblr a lot, and I remember actually following like 2 or 3 people specifically because they did actively post meta about Leviathan. So I consider that my tiniest fandom.
I think the smallest fandom I engaged with at any time was Tales of Vesperia after its initial launch in the US.
Okay.
But I think that kind of came out at the point where things were sort of slowly bridging over away from fanfiction.net and were like on Tumblr or other sites. I may be misremembering that. That was kind of the smallest.
And the Tales of fan base is like really small but super dedicated, I've noticed.
Super dedicated.
I love it. I am really into, I'm not really into it, but I'm into, never mind, canceled. I don't remember what the whole fucking game is called.
You're not really into it. You're a fake fan.
I am. So Cass, what have you also been watching this weekend?
I've been really sad, so I've been watching a lot of Jenna Marbles videos.
God, do you miss her?
I miss her a lot, but Julian is doing a fantastic job, and the podcast has been really fun, and Julian continues to put out really fun and amazing content. And somebody posted in the comments, they were like, at the same level that Jenna was falling in love with Julian, we were also, as an audience, falling in love with Julian. As so parasocial cute as that is. But I was watching a lot of Jenna Marbles videos this week while I played Final Fantasy XIV and cried.
I love that for you. I have not been busy.
That's false.
Yeah, it is.
You've been very busy this week. Busy
these past 2 weeks. I finished the act.
What are your feelings?
So I have daddy issues, so that last episode really hurt really bad for me. But besides that, I mean, I knew what was going to happen, you know? Yeah. I knew at the end of the day she was still going to get convicted, you know? Yeah. But to see it all come together and to come to fruition, I was like really satisfied with it at the same time. And I know I've been referring to her as GRB. And now instead of saying her first name. So I know for a fact GRB did not approve nor give consent to the creation of the act, if I recall correctly. So I'm kind of curious to know, like, down the line, once she is in fact, like, freed, so to say, because doesn't she only have like a 20-year sentence or something like that? Yeah,
she got a lighter sentence because of circumstances.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see what's going to happen when she is released, and then if like another documentary will come out or another series where it's a little bit more about like what she has to say. So we will see, I guess, in 20 years from now. But then I also started watching Shiro Bako, which is a 2014 fall anime about 5 girls working in the animation industry. And it's absolutely wonderful because it's like adult women with adult problems. And like romance is not a thing whatsoever in the series, which is such a...
Love that.
I love it so much. Like, I'm always on the hunt for series that have A, adult protagonists, and B, if it's about a woman, not to have like romance in it. And what is unfortunate is that this is technically considered a shonen instead of even like, first of all, I don't understand why it's a shonen and not a shoujo, but whatever. That's how things are marketed. And unfortunately, it's not a seinen. For people who aren't super familiar with anime, while shonen is like for younger boys to middle school, seinen tends to be for high schoolers to adult. So the fact that this is a shonen, sometimes it does feel a little bit shallow, but I'm still really satisfied with it. And I did in fact cry the most recent episode I watched because one of like the older senior animators decided to lead like a whole entire really hard scene, and everybody was like really excited to work with him and learn from him, and I just cried because it just was so nice. Aww. And they all got to finish, like, and it was the last episode of the series, and they got to finish the episode, like, because it's about an animation industry, and they all got to finish that, so that was really charming. And then I rewatched Being John Malkovich for the first time in 9 years last night.
Never seen it.
Oh my god. I really like it.
My only exposure to John Malkovich is through the second season of The Young Pope named The New Pope, which I haven't finished yet. No spoilers, please.
I never watched it, so you're fine. But Being John Malkovich is John Cusack and Cameron Diaz are a couple.
I have beef with the Cusack family for naming
so
their children
valid.
John and Joan.
I love that.
It bothers me so much. The amount of times people will be like, oh yeah, John Cusack's in that. I'm like, which one do I picture? I don't know if
I mean, they look virtually the same.
They do not.
Yes, they do.
Joan Cusack is so beautiful. John Cusack just looks like a man.
I guess. Maybe in this one, I was slightly smitten by John Cusack because I was like, damn, Otacon real.
I mean, he's not an unattractive man by any standards. He's an actor in Hollywood.
I mean, and now he kind of looks like Mac at Night, but I'm glad you enjoyed that.
That was a real good one.
John Cusack works like on a half floor of a building, and he accidentally finds a portal to John Malkovich's mind, and you could live inside of John Malkovich for 15 minutes, and it's about, like, all the shit that happens because they could do it, and, there's, like, this unfortunately, there's, like, this kind of weird love triangle that goes on, and John Cusack's wife, aka Cameron Diaz, falls in love with John Cusack's business partner.
Foolish.
Well,
Absolutely foolish.
so, not to give spoilers, but Cameron Diaz becomes obsessed with being in John Malkovich, so then the business partner can have sex with her while she's in John Malkovich.
Oh my god.
It is awful, and I can't tell if this movie can be considered a lesbian romance movie because of everything that happens, or if it can because it does in fact end with them getting together. Sorry, spoilers for a 21-year-old movie, but there's also, like, this weird, I don't want to say it's transphobic, but it kind of is. In it, you know what it is? It's 90s transphobia. So, there's, like, this line where Cameron Diaz for the first time comes out with John Malkovich and is like, I want a sex change. Like, I want to be a man. I've never felt so alive. And I'm just like, girl, you're just a lesbian.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, like, not only is there a lot to unpack, but, like, girl, you're just, like, you just like women. And there's but in turn, by saying that to yourself, that also, like, begs the question, then you're invalidating a trans narrative, and that people are transgender, and it's not just, oh, you're gay. Like, and that's just, there's, like, so much to say about that. I'm just like, when I watched that scene, however, I do in fact love the concept of that movie so much. So it's like,
i.e. keep an eye out for our Examining John Malkovich Through a Queer Lens episode.
Oh, I literally was thinking about writing that for my upcoming website with a friend. Like, I wish I was kidding. I think I might. So now to get on, I mean, do you have anything else to share with the class?
I just want to talk to the family of John and Joan Cusack.
Yeah, it
just bothers me. That's all. I don't like families with coordinated names. I'm sorry. If you and all your siblings have, like, the first initial... You
could say the Duggars of 20 million kids and counting.
There's a lot of other problems there. Anyway, speaking of fucked up family dynamics, let's talk about ABO.
Yay! Do you want me to start?
I certainly feel, Teese, that you are the expert this week, and so I'm gonna let you take the lead. Do you want to maybe synopsize the basis of this lawsuit and then tell me about each of the works?
Okay, so I think we're going to play a little game first. I am going to read you 2 book summaries.
Okay.
And then I want you to tell me if you think that they're the same story. Okay? All right. Claire is desperate, sheltering amidst a dwindling enclave of frightened Omega women. Claire cannot provide enough to feed them all. All her friends are starving. All due to one escaped convict's violent rise to power. Despite taking every possible precaution, Claire is captured and her worst nightmare realized. Shepard, discovering a rare Omega in his mists, claims her like a prize, forcing a pair bond that ties her to him forever. And and then there's also, my bad, I didn't realize that there was another paragraph. She fights her instincts and his will, because no matter how manipulative the bond might be, she despises what he's done to her people. If she cannot find a way to help her friends, if she cannot escape, everybody she loves will die. So this is the plot summary, according to Goodreads, from Born to Be Bound by Addison Kane. And now I'm going to read you the summary of Crave to Conquer by Zoe Ellis. And this is also a Goodreads synopsis. I read both of these books, but my brain got so fried from reading this absolute awful porn that I, like, don't feel connected to my body anymore. So here's Crave to Conquer by Zoe Ellis. The most savage alpha in the land is relentlessly searching for his Omega, and she is hiding right under his nose. Knowing her life would be over if Emperor Draco ever discovered she was an Omega, Kaelin is trapped in a desperate struggle. She came for his secrets, prepared for his arrogance and wild nature, but not for the effect he would have on her. Now she must fight to escape not only the ruthless alpha, but also her own desire. Do these books sound the same to you?
No.
So...
They I mean, like...
They just sound like trope books to me. Like, you know how Harlequin
exactly.
romance novels, like, there's literally, like, 7 set plots that you have to pick from if you write for Harlequin? Like, that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Alpha Beta Omega is originally a general fan fiction trope. It's a universe that you pick and choose your own writing, and it feels like this is just puzzle pieces connected together to make 2 different books that just happen to be really similar.
As we discussed last week, like, it wasn't made by one singular person, right? You had a person who had an idea and a person who took that idea via kink meme prompt and fleshed it out in their own meta.
Yes.
So it wasn't even something that was like one writer came out the gate swinging with this totally new original concept. It was this idea kind of percolated and sat in this kink meme, and somebody picked up on it, and it just sort of blew up from there. We didn't actually look into it. Did other people fill that prompt?
I don't know. Maybe.
We should see about that. But not right now. I don't have the energy for that.
It just feels so long ago since I had to read real person fan fiction about Supernatural. So now I'm going to, I guess, give a brief overview. So Addison Kane, the creator of Born to Be Bound, kept getting emails in her inbox that was like, I think this book is stealing your idea and is plagiarizing you. And Addison Kane's like, what the fuck? So Addison Kane emails her mutual friend, and she's like, do you think Zoe is stealing my idea? Do you think she's plagiarizing me? And her, like, this other author is like, what the fuck are you talking about now? And I guess, lo and behold, Addison Kane reads this book and is like, this is plagiarism. So I guess now is the fun discussion of why do we think this is plagiarism? Because I've been reading and researching this a lot, and some sites were nice enough to actually make like comparison lists of why they're the same, and the argument is that she's not necessarily lifting text directly from her books, because let's be real, the execution of these 2 books are vastly different.
Which one's better, Teese? If you had to recommend one,
which
one would you recommend?
Awful in so many ways.
I for total context and transparency, I have not read these books.
Yeah,
I have not read them. Teese has read them in their entirety.
My brain is so fucking filled with this. It's all I talk about. Like, like yesterday I was in the car, I was like, hey guys, you want to hear about this? Like, I'll be on Discord call and it's quiet. I'm like, hey guys, did you know about the 4th gender in Binha fanfiction ABO? And people are like, shut up, I beg of you. And I can't stop. It's awful. It's so bad. I'm gonna be free after this. And I just want it washed from me. Like, a lot, apparently, I didn't realize this, but the ABO Amazon erotica community is very close-knit from what I've seen.
Well, a lot of that actually, total perception of the outsider, right? A lot of that seems to be kind of Addison Kane's doing, in that she has a Facebook group where people talk about Omegaverse, and Addison Kane thinks, and she has stated this herself, that she was the first individual to write heterosexual Omegaverse novels. She obviously wasn't, no. But I think maybe in the published Amazon space, she might be able to say she was one of the first, certainly. Not in fandom spaces, but in like self-published indie universe spaces, right? Addison Kane may have been one of the first people to write it. So obviously the conversation is then going to naturally sort of circle around her. Authors in general are relatively close-knit. I mean, it's networking.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But like if you're writing something from a very niche subgenre, you're very likely to run into and also want to socialize with people who are writing and interested in the same thing as you. Even if that's just to say, hey, could you read my book and tell me what you think? Which, I mean, we'll talk about that later. That's kind of a dangerous practice as a writer.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Definitely. So I am reading a general overview from Book Riot of similar things. So according to Book Riot here,
I just want to contextualize this. Addison Kane filed a takedown notice.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm
against...
sorry. I got so distracted.
No, it's okay.
Lay it on me, please.
So this all started in April 2018 when Addison Kane, who had published these Omegaverse novels, filed a takedown notice against Zoe Ellis, who had also published Omegaverse works. The charges were dropped or they were dismissed or something, and Zoe Ellis's publisher then filed a counter lawsuit against Kane for damages, defamation, and
neglect was one of them. There was like
was
a
it?
lot
Yeah.
of random stuff that she was getting sued for in this lawsuit.
There was like a whole litany of things, and the really interesting part too is that Zoe Ellis's counterclaim did not have the evidence like baked into it the way, so like when Addison Kane's lawsuit came forward and like what we were able to find online, right, the evidence was literally right there, you could read it. Zoe Ellis's did not have any of this, and it is also worth noting that when Addison Kane filed against Zoe Ellis, Addison Kane did not read, she filed the claim against Zoe Ellis's 3 books. So it was a trilogy. She filed it against all 3 of them and had all 3 of them taken down, but admitted within the claim that she hadn't read the 3rd book, but that she had read the first 2 and believed that because of what she had read, it was more than likely that Zoe Ellis had continued to plagiarize and lift her ideas. The actual claim of plagiarism, though, isn't levied against the Omegaverse concept itself of Alpha, Beta, Omega. And I do think it's important because it's one of the huge, like, misappropriations that happens when we talk about this, is that Addison Kane at no point claims that she is the creator of Omegaverse.
No.
Or that it belongs to her, or that it started with her. There are several quotes throughout her Facebook where she states, "I do not own the concept of Omegaverse, and I enjoy reading stories in that genre. Omegaverse is also not like in werewolf stories. Shifter stories are different and follow their own meta, and I also love reading them. If any of you want to write an Omegaverse story, please do. I'd read it, comment on it, and encourage you. So long as it's your own original thought and not an unauthorized derivative of an author's original work being passed off as another individual's work. I also grasp that erotica is a genre with established tropes, and dystopian non-con is a subgenre with even more familiar tropes. So there's bound to be some crossover," which people kind of took as her shading Zoe Ellis after the fact. And this was actually a comment that was included as part of Zoe Ellis's claim. Yeah, it is a whole sort of tangled up mess of like lawsuit, counter lawsuit, and she has relatively recently, I should say, been subpoenaed by Zoe Ellis's lawyers to release her private conversations and DMs to see if maybe she was like spreading further defamatory information, or that maybe she herself had ripped off Zoe Ellis, which, woof.
There's also, it should also be mentioned that Addison Kane is also considered to be the person that popularized dubcon and non-con within male-female Omegaverse erotica, which she's proud of it, which feels really gross to me.
Yeah, she writes, "I think the reason the MF pairings are more violent is because I was the first to write them, and I'm a non-con dubcon writer. What followed suit was keeping in line with the trend." And okay, so I personally do not have an issue with people writing things about rape, things that are dubious consent. I haven't read these books, so I can't say how the narratives themselves feel about those things. I don't personally enjoy books that are like, I'm not a person who enjoys reading rape fantasies. That's not,
no.
I just don't enjoy that.
That
there doesn't mean I think they're wrong.
Yeah. I mean, people cope in their own ways. People, like, I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum at all.
Unless you're writing real people fanfiction.
Yeah.
I will yuck on you for that.
Or freak shit, yeah. Like, for instance, in Crave to Conquer, I mean, granted, that's the Zoe Ellis book. However, I'm pretty sure it was insinuated that Kaylin's, like, pelvic bone broke because of sex.
I saw somebody mentioning that like, he physically harms her because of how hard he fucks her.
Yeah, he literally, like, specifically in Crave to Conquer, like, sex is used as a weapon, like, as torture, which really made me uncomfortable. And, I mean, Born to Be whatever the fuck.
Born to Be Bound.
Thank you. Born to Be Bound is more like, I'm going to force you to have sex with me the whole entire time, which is still
Mm-hmm.
non-consensual. It's still sexual assault. It's still awful, awful, awful. But there was something about Crave to Conquer to me that made me so unbelievably uncomfortable with the sexual content in it. But I read it.
What really surprises me that wasn't brought up by anyone when I was trying to find information on these is that if you pull up the covers of both of these books,
Yes.
they are strikingly similar. And I understand, okay, I'm an artist. Like, I understand that there are only so many things you can do within your genre. And especially, like, there is a precedent to be met with romance novel covers. But both of the books, I'm looking at the covers side by side.
Mm-hmm.
Born to be Bound has a black and white sort of gauzy finish around the edges. And then there is a super buff, hyper-muscled man in the center who is one of the few figures of, like, actual color on this cover.
Mm-hmm.
And then the text, Born to be Bound, has this, like, burnished gold and orange finish and is, like, serif font with some pretty sharp little, like, curls and things like that. And then it's right underneath that name of author. And then Crave to Conquer is, again, like this sort of gauzy black and white finish around the edges. There's a castle in the background.
Oh.
In black and white. And then you see the back of, like, a hyper-muscled man. He's not in as saturated color, but he is in color as compared to the background. And again, you have this, like, burnished gold finishing for your title font, which is, again, like a strong, bold font that is a serif. And then right underneath is author name. And I'm like, these look like, I mean, okay, like, they can look really similar, and I get that. But I'm surprised this hasn't been brought up as, like, a, hey, those are really kind of similar.
Well,
and maybe we should talk about that
that's
aspect,
not
too.
those aren't the only books either. Like, for instance, I'm looking at Alpha by Isolin, is a very hairy, beefy-chested man. You don't see his head, you only just see his torso and his arms, and on the bottom it says choosing her alpha, and choosing her is in a serif font, and then alpha is in a sans serif, and it's in silver text as opposed to gold. And then Keon by Callie Rhodes is the Boundary Lands, which is also compared in one of the articles I read, and that shows a muscular man with tattoos and a very similar style. And I guess this is just like how we make fun of romance novels for having really similar covers.
Well, and I wonder if that's a strategy too, right? Like, they aren't self-published, but you're obviously working within a network who said, okay, Addison Kane's book did really well. I mean, it made it onto the New York Times bestseller list. We're going to kind of follow in that trend, because if people like her book, maybe we can kind of fool them into thinking this was maybe also adjacent to Addison Kane.
So apparently it's speculated that Zoe Ellis is actually just a self-publisher and doesn't have a real publisher. If you look at what other books this company has published, it is only Zoe Ellis's books. And this raises the question that why is she just not saying herself and not her company? Like, she keeps referring to as my publisher, my company. Like, she isn't admitting that it is just her, which is kind of fishy.
I think, filed her lawsuit from the location of a self-publishing distributor. I think it was like Data to Digital is like the location from which she filed her suit.
Which is a very popular distributor to use within the self-publishing community.
And it's like, they're not managing her. She's not signed by our knowledge to an agent. Anyway, Teese, would you like to share some of the similarities? Because, again, this lawsuit is not about one suing the other because of you stole the concept of Omegaverse. This lawsuit originates from Addison Kane looking at Zoe Ellis's book and saying, you took my plot beat for beat and just rehashed it in your own book, which bold, because if we're going to go by that, we're going to have a lot of problems within, like, the literary field as a whole.
So, yes. Book Riot was nice enough to make a brief outline of the combination of the two. So instead of just being like, Born to be Bound did this, Crave to Conquer did this, I'm just going to give general lines. So, according to Book Riot, the protagonist is a leader of a violent army that has taken over a city. His men follow without question. Omegas are dying off from attacks by alphas. They go into hiding to survive. Main protagonist is searching for the missing Omegas to give him his soldiers. Protagonist has Beta confident as the second in command. It is only the Beta. He is the only Beta in the army, which is not true because in Born to be Bound there are several Betas mentioned that they are in fact in the army. So tisk tisk, I know what I read. So this one is both Claire and Kaylin approaches the protagonist disguised as a Beta in order to help the Omegas. Technically, Kaylin does not ask the Alpha in question to save the Omega. She just wants to leech off of his resources as she pretends to be a historian. So there's a discrepancy there. Both Claire and Caitlin suppresses her scent and uses a drug so she could pass as a Beta. And then both Claire's and Caitlin's magic.
It's Kaylin.
Kaylin.
Not Caitlin.
Jesus Christ.
She's different. She's not like other girls.
Her name is Caitlin. She has an 8-year-old sister. Both of these women, their drugs, magic, whatever you want to call it, fail in a room full of alpha males. Alphas who smell her enter in a rut. A fight breaks out. Protagonist fights off potential suitors and steals her away. Alpha undresses before Omega, and you're fighting your instincts, you're fighting your cycle. Omega fights instincts to refuse Alpha's advances, fails, and then finally Omega is mindless in her heat, has no free will to reject Alpha. Alright, well, that just sounds like every ABO fic ever.
Right. I mean, there's tiny nuances in there, like the presence of an army and soldiers, but overall,
like, for instance, I was reading an article and one was like, well, they're both in domes, and they're not. Like, one is in a dome and then one's just in a vague eastern land. There is one thing that was pointed out, though. It's like, okay, yeah, that is a little bit weird, but one author was like, why are both of them trapped in a room? And I was like, all right, how common is that? But also, like, I guess Baku Decker fucker 1991 is gonna get sued by Addison Kane too, because, like, this sounds like every other fucking ABO fanfiction to me.
Right, and, like, so there is an individual who wrote a very long breakdown of this court case and the things going on within it, and they also have charts putting the beats, like the story beats, right up against each other so you can see where they happen in place in the story. And they were like, I did my own research to find out how prevalent these things are, but they are one individual who was being given direct links by fans who made comments of, like, oh, it's kind of similar to this, oh, it's kind of similar to that. They're also a friend of Addison Kane, so as much as they try to remove their bias, they're not going to be able to completely.
Oh, yeah.
And it is impossible for one singular person to take under their, like, scope of knowledge the entire breadth of ABO fic that exists. Like, for all we know, Addison Kane, I joked with you earlier, could have stolen from a Yuri on Ice fic, and we wouldn't know it. Because, like, you can't do... You as one individual cannot source from all that information. And, like, the existence of, like, an Omega being trapped in an isolated room to, like, be kept there for breeding is not uncommon. I've read that in multiple ABO fics.
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
That's it. There's this idea of, like, oh, here's, like, a specific chamber in, like, the home that's used, and, like, the Omega is kept in, like, when they enter their heat because things get so messy and, like, sex is fucking stinky. And, like, you don't want that in your normal bedroom. So, I mean, like, this idea that, like, if they had nothing to do with each other and they weren't in a lawsuit against one another and they weren't pitted up against each other, right? The idea that either of these works is wholly original in any concept is laughable. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. It's just that the nature of the written word is so much that, like, there are only so many stories you can tell. And when you're working within a very niche subgenre that has, like, its own rules and expectations, that isn't as broad as something like, oh, horror. Like, there's so many things you can do with horror. But if you're like, it's a dystopian alpha, beta, omega, dub-con/non-con subgenre, there's kind of only so many ways you can navigate that, you know?
Even the U.S. Copyright Office states a derivative work is a work based on or derived from one or more already existing works, and followed by only the owner of copyright in a work has the right to prepare or to authorize someone else to create an adaptation of this work. The owner of a copyright is generally the author or someone who has obtained the exclusive rights from the author. In any case where copyrighted work is used without the permission of a copyright owner, copyright protection will not be extended to any part of the work in which such material has been used unlawfully. The unauthorized adaptation of work may constitute copyright infringement. So this is important to mention that because nobody owns Omegaverse, there is no way to truly stake claim that this should be taken down in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm remembering the story correctly, I recently attended a talk by a lawyer in copyright just to learn a little bit more about rights, and it also depends on like the nature of the media itself, and copyright law is ever changing and so complicated and has become even more complicated with the internet. And I think there's just a lot of people who aren't, I mean, I'm not totally aware of like what is and isn't, you know, protected here, especially in this context. And like even lawyers who are chiming in on it are like, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because it isn't just, you know, like she can't write about Omegaverse. I wrote about Omegaverse. It isn't just, you know, Addison Kane saying you can't write this. It has Omegaverse. It's Addison Kane feeling that beat for beat her story was just rewritten with different characters, which like, that's understandable. She does make some statements that to me like automatically have me against her and not wanting to side with her.
She's very unlikable.
Yeah, she actively says that like she felt violated in reading Zoe Ellis's work because of how much she felt it took from her own, which was like really upsetting to read because first of all, you're talking about books which center around non-consent and dubious consent, and for you to liken yourself to having been violated just feels really tone deaf to me. She wrote a whole blog entry about this entire thing.
Oh my God.
And from the very beginning of it, she frames herself as the victim. And as someone who has dealt with plagiarism, both direct plagiarism, like copy pasting of my work, and more subtle plagiarism, kind of like what may be going on here, it fucking sucks. It feels really, really disheartening, and it like totally destroys your motivation to create. But like you're talking in a post-Me Too world to your wide audience of people who are coming to you to read specifically rape fantasies. And like, there's nothing wrong with you writing those rape fantasies, but for you to then to equate your plagiarism, your purported plagiarism, I should say, alleged plagiarism, to the feeling of violation on that degree is just like, Addison Kane, maybe take a step back here for a second. Yeah, she talks about being silenced, and she ends and like she signs off with this hashtag get loud with a really broad, no directive call to action by her supporters, which is like very clearly just about like, oh, you know, like let's make sure this work never gets out. My personal belief is that I think this whole lawsuit is like financially motivated for reasons I can get into then. It's not a good look. It's not a good look, Addison.
We should mention we're not lawyers.
We're not.
We're just two people on the internet with a little bit of free time making a podcast, you know? But nobody paid us to read this, nobody paid us to do this, nobody paid us to map sides. Like, we are just two people on the internet that are just talking out of our ass right now.
Because that New York Times article pisses me off.
Yeah, so a lot of the information that we actually were reading about was from like 2018, 2019. And what's re-sparked this whole entire interest in this case was that the New York Times in May released an article about this. And for a lot of us, we were just like, oh my God, okay, like it's Omegaverse, like lawsuit, ha ha ha. But for a lot of people, this is like their first exposure to the Omegaverse. Yeah. And there's also this whole world.
The way that mainstream media talks about fandom is often,
oh my God, it's awful,
disgustingly derogatory and like really annoyingly derogatory in a way where it's like, you didn't even bother to do the bare minimum research. I mean, the New York Times article is like, it's peppered with pictures of just real life wolves, which is like, okay, you already missed the point.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like,
yeah.
It pisses me off.
I read an article that was like, it's werewolf sex. I was like, it's not werewolf sex. They just not. I hate this family. Like,
yeah.
Read your own fucking work and figure this out.
Well, and the line where it's like they engage in wolfish sex, and it's like, I'm sorry that you're having really boring sex. Like, I mean, the New York Times article is just kind of frustrating because, again, it's like, oh, you don't really know what you're talking about, or you were directed to lessen the extent of knowledge you're sharing here to a degree. I don't know, maybe the person who wrote it is really into fandom, but more than likely they're not, and so they're coming at it from a lens that just feels very... It feels unresearched, and it's like, if you're going to talk about this lawsuit, I think you do have to kind of talk about the origins of ABO, because, like, ABO does start in DubCon, and that does color all of it, and so it's interesting reading people talking about, you know, Addison Kane's work, where they're like, it's so violent and so aggressive, but I feel like the MLM genre of this is, like, much more fluffy and sweet, and I'm like, what have you been reading? Like, yes, it can be,
I felt
but
that way
also...
too. What I was about to say earlier was it's also important to note that there is this whole community of people who write erotica on Amazon for $2.99 a book, and it's like the length of what a usual, like, long shot, one shot plot smut fan fiction, and people willingly pay $2.99 and under. $2.99 is important because if you charge more than $3, Amazon will start taking a percentage out of what people have paid. So if you're a self-published author, usually people price it at $2.99 or lower, so you can get all of the sales money from it. So that's why that exists.
Which, if I can segue then,
yes,
that is like the perfect segue into talking about copy paste Chris.
That's what I was about to
say. Which also layers on top of this. So Kilby Blades writes that when well executed, rapid releasing is a surefire way to activate the benefits of top rankings. Better rankings translates to real money, and once Amazon sees that your book is doing well, it starts promoting your book for free. And once that happens, guess what? You sell more books, which keeps you closer to the top. It's a self-reinforcing cycle, end quote. Which was in reference to an incident that happened with an author by the name of Cristiane Saruya, who was a Brazilian self-published writer and is she's a plagiarist. So in February 18th of 2019, Courtney Milan tweeted about Cristiane Saruya and called her a plagiarist and an idiot. Go off. And it started this whole storm. And I guess, like, Cristiane Saruya was, like, a relatively well-known author and who was also publishing, like, romance books. So after Courtney Milan tweeted this, you know, talking about how her work had been directly copy and pasted by Saruya and put into her books, which, you know, you could buy on Amazon, Tessa Dare went on an in-depth hunt through Saruya's work to locate more plagiarism. Saruya responded and stated that the plagiarism was the fault of ghostwriters who she hired through Fiverr. And if you're unfamiliar, Fiverr is an evil website which allows you to sell your services as a freelancer to people looking to buy them. And it's normally all about undercutting people. As this person put, Kilby Blades put, Fiverr's only like one step up from shady Craigslist deals.
Yeah.
And the ghostwriter that Saruya hired had already removed their Fiverr page. Saruya's plagiarism included writers like Diana Galbadon, who writes the Outlander series, Nora Roberts, who is one of the biggest names in romance literature.
And also hates fan fiction, hates plagiarism, and has no shame in going after you. She's like...
Which, I'll get into
Disney
that then.
of, like, putting down cease and desists.
Yeah. And, like, part of that came about because of this, because she got so fed up and tired of people stealing her work. Saruya also stole from recipes, articles, and other websites.
Yeah.
Like, she stole a cake recipe and put it in her book. And I'm saying Saruya and not the ghostwriter because she published it under her name. And, like, once you put it under your name, you are claiming that you are the copyright holder. After all of this, she disappeared from the internet. I think her books have been removed. But at the time of all these releases, Amazon's algorithm favored authors with new releases and steady sales. And I'm pretty sure it still does.
Yeah.
And there is a huge desire for romance ghostwriters, multiple at a time for one project, which indicates an industry that's being fueled less by artisans like, you know, the writers Addison Kane and Zoe Ellis, like plagiarism or no, and is fueled more by, like, a large company that's seeking to profit. Because if you're not aware, romance is, like, the number one selling genre. It fuels most of the literary agency because of how much it sells and the rate at which it sells. Like, if you want to make money and you're passionate about writing, like, fucking go for romance. Like, if you enjoy that, like, that's kind of where the money is, and most people know that. I think after that, it's like YA. But, I mean, there's also a level of humor to that because of how much, like, what is it, prose, like, general prose writers will look down on genre writers. Like, get fucked.
Mm-hmm.
We write fun shit. But, like, all of this then comes into the fact that, like, you know, you mentioned Nora Roberts hates fan fiction. Most writers, I remember Charlene Harris in particular, who writes the True Blood books, having a note on her website at all times that if you write fan fiction, she doesn't want to read it, she doesn't want to see it, do not send it to her.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people take this as initial hostility, but what it's really important to remember is that it is dangerous for published writers of any kind to read work that is in a spec stage, that is being shopped around, that is fan fiction. Work that is not published, it is dangerous for those writers to engage with. Because if you send somebody your fic and they are a published writer, and like it doesn't matter if they never even look at it, if they write something down the line that is vaguely similar to what you sent them, you can go and claim plagiarism and sue them.
There was something that actually happened like a few years back, I recall, that there was this whole entire giant lawsuit about that, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. And like Addison Kane and Zoe Ellis had correspondence with one another. And I was talking earlier, like in that quote where she's like, hey, if you write Omegaverse, like send it to me. I'd love to see it. Like, that's a dangerous thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure she's talking specifically about published work on Amazon that she can buy and support, but it is a very nebulous comment, and I can't guarantee that's what she meant. Like, I mean, hi, if you're a writer, if you are a baby writer who isn't published, or if you're a published writer, don't send fan fiction to published writers, and don't receive fan fiction from other people if you are a published writer, or have these discussions with people about like potential plots or like helping them with their writing. Like, if you're actively working on something, that is a very dangerous position to put yourself in, because you're putting yourself in the position that Zoe Ellis and Addison Kane are now in, where like it's not clear like
That's
what
literally
happened.
What your editor and your agent is for. Like,
Exactly. Or like beta readers around you, friends and family who are not involved with this
Mhm.
industry. You know, like people whose job it is to beta read for you. Because Zoe Ellis was going into these fan groups and regularly telling these other writers like, oh my god, I loved your book so much. And it's like, that's all well and good until she starts writing her own book. And then it's like, okay, well, Zoe Ellis, we know you read Born to be Bound.
like there's literally physical evidence that you have.
Of you, yeah, exactly. Of you saying like, oh my god, I read this and I loved it so much. So it's like, whether or not she intentionally plagiarized this work, it is just, oof. And I feel bad for both of them in this situation, because it does suck to have your work plagiarized. And I'm not saying that Zoe Ellis explicitly plagiarized her work, but to even feel like your work has been plagiarized or compromised in that way, it sucks. It sucks. And to be Zoe Ellis, who, like, maybe she did write something that was, like, totally original, and she's had this idea for years and years and years. And now she's, like, she's suing for damages because her books were obviously removed off of Amazon in the interim, while this was still, like, more up in the air than it is now. She's also suing for, like, you know, lost wages because of that. And when we're talking about the Amazon algorithm, not having your books up for a period of time and not being able to make those sales is gonna fuck you over.
Some of these takedowns lasted as long as 8 months. So think about how much, like, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, kind of like when a book is only, 99 cents or whatever. However, I've been out of a job before for 7 months and it was living hell.
Yeah.
Like, I know for a fact, it is mentioned in the New York Times article that, so this is like Zoe Ellis's side gig. Like, she works as a teacher. Yeah. Like, her real name isn't out there because she does work for a teacher. And that's another thing. Yeah. Zoe Ellis also technically doxed Addison Kane and released Addison Kane's legal name. And Addison Kane actually had to request that her name be taken off and only use her pen name in this court.
But that information is still out there. I mean, I found it very quickly today. I found that information and her full address, like her full home residential address,
which is awful.
Leave these women alone. Leave them alone. Don't start any shit. Don't do it.
Yeah, please don't. Do it. Please don't. And I would assume people who do listen to us clearly would know better. But there's clearly people on the internet who don't. I mean, there's this whole culture of people who leave nasty comments and ratings and remarks like, oh, so you stole this, you plagiarizer, and like, bro.
Well, that's the thing. Like, Zoe Ellis is going to have to adopt a new pen name, a new pseudonym, to publish under, because she's never going to be able to do anything under Zoe Ellis. And I'm sure the moment people catch a whiff of the fact that, like, oh, this is Zoe Ellis again, like, they're going to be like, oh, no, we can't support you anymore because of the plagiarism, which some people recover from that. Like a certain very popular young adult writer who published in fan fiction for quite a long time, who may or may not share some letters of the same name with me. We can talk about that another time, though. Yeah. But it is, like, it's a nasty lawsuit, and it feels very petty, and it feels very personal. And I don't know that I necessarily, like, come down on one side of being like, this one's right and this one's wrong, because Same. It is such a muddy issue, you know? I would have to peek into Zoe Ellis's brain and be like,
Yes. It's also important to, it's not necessarily important, it's, I guess, a little fun fact is that Born to Be Bound was a Batman fan fiction at first.
Yeah! I couldn't find the original, and I'm so sad about that. But it's apparently that Bane fan fiction, and we don't know if it was like a self-insert OC, or if it was, oh fuck, I forget her name. Or if it was a canon character.
Yeah.
But it was a Bane fan fiction in Chris Nolan's Batman universe.
And when I was reading these books, I pictured the men, the alphas, as like...
Did they all look like Tom Hardy to you?
Tom Hardy
would
Jason
never
Momoa.
do
Like, and that's another thing that, like, with ABO, there's like this weird inherent racism with just the description of the alphas and how they're never, like, I think in Crave to Conquer it's mentioned that he has darker skin than Kaylin, and it's mentioned that he has black eyes and stuff like that, while in Born to Be Bound he has gray eyes, I think.
Yeah, romance authors, I don't think that's an issue necessarily with ABO exclusively.
Yeah.
I think that's an issue with romance as a whole. This idea of the quote-unquote exotic, animalistic other male, which is deeply entrenched in racism. And of course, like, you get this, like, just gross stereotypes relating to penis size, which, if you weren't aware, that belief came from the fact that white slave owners distributed and proliferated this idea that black men had larger penises, and that inherently made them more animal-like, because obviously what has a bigger penis? Horses and bull cattle and animals which are beasts of burden. It is a horribly racist stereotype that has no grounding. Don't come at me. It just shouldn't be there. But in romance novels in particular, there is, like, this love of, like, you know, petite white heroines or heroes. I mean,
and both of the women in this are, it's noted that they are hairless, that they are small, that they are petite, that they are feminine, and I recently watched Horror Noir, which is a documentary about Black people in horror movies, and they talk a lot about white savior complex and how Black people are viewed as the villain a lot, and then when, like, the wave of heroines and Black horror as a whole and stuff like that, and they talk a lot about how a lot of these characteristics are used in the old school Universal monsters and we don't even realize it. And for instance, like, I've never watched it, but I have this odd love for Creature of the Black Lagoon, and in it they mentioned that, like, if you think about it, the Creature of the Black Lagoon has, like, really big lips, the way that racist caricatures were drawn. I was like, oh no. And, like, I have a book actually about the makeup artist who designed the Creature of the Black Lagoon costume, and now I'm, like, afraid to read it because I'm afraid to find out, like, oh god, what's going on.
Well, and a lot of those aren't necessarily intentional.
No.
They are just so baked into our culture
it's so
that we don't even
within
realize
white
it. I mean,
culture, yeah.
Like, looking at Disney villains, I mean, the gays always joke, I say as one of them,
yes.
The gays always joke about how, like, oh, Disney villains are, like, obscenely queer-coded, and almost all of the time they are people of color, or they don't have white skin. When you become aware of these things, and then you start to see them everywhere, it is so disturbing how it has always existed around you, and how, without even realizing it, you in turn, like,
internalize
help to proliferate.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So that's a whole other can of worms. I don't think we have time to
Yes.
talk about racism
No.
within romance novels.
It exists. It is a huge problem. And so it's going to color this.
And I don't think I would even be necessarily comfortable. I mean, I'm white passing. I'm mixed.
That is not the conversation
yeah,
for us to
it's
have.
not. Yeah, it's not us. Like we
Yeah.
can't. I mean, we're not professionals in that situation.
If you want to have a conversation about that kind of thing, though, may I recommend the podcast Fantai via the Maximum Fun Network. It is a podcast run by two people of color talking about things they love that sometimes fucking suck in terms of their representation and how they portray things. So check out that podcast for that kind of discussion.
I also love Attack of the Queer Wolf, which is a Fangoria podcast network podcast, and that is two gay men and one black woman, and the three of them watch horror movies, and frequently their guests are usually people of color. Most of the time they are, in fact, LGBT, and they talk a lot about, like, well, this is transphobic, and horror is a lot more transphobic than we remember, and stuff like that. So if you're into horror and feel that way about a lot of stuff, I would also suggest that as well.
I guess I do also want to share, too, that, like, it is our full intention to have so many guests on this podcast, because there's a lot of areas of fandom that, you know, we just don't know a lot about or don't have as much direct experience with. And so we want to bring on people who, one, are either more affected or more ingrained in those areas of fandom. And we have a list already of people who we intend to reach out to and would love to have on.
And if you want to just join us, give us an email. Like, we are down to make connections and make friends and learn about things we don't know about.
Absolutely. And if you do want to email us, our email is authorsnotepod@gmail.com, and our Twitter is @authorsnotepod.
Can I ask one final question?
Yes.
Do you think this is plagiarism?
Oh, God. Is this plagiarism? I haven't read them, so I can't confidently say. Based on the information presented to me and what I have read, I do not think it is outright or intentional plagiarism.
I don't think so either. I've read them. They are executed very differently. They're a very different experience. I think it's just an awful combination of tropes that have just ended up looking that way. I really don't think so.
If somebody did a derivative work of The Lion King or of Hamlet, okay, let's say somebody did a derivative work of...
We didn't say this in the episode.
But if somebody did like a derivative or reinterpreted Hamlet, but in like an animal kingdom, right? Could Disney sue them?
I don't think so, because I mean, Disney literally stole the idea of Kimbra. This is like, Lion King is literally Kimbra the lion.
It's Kimba.
It's Kimba?
It's Kimba. It's not Kimbra. Kimbra's the singer. I read that text from you earlier and I was like, oh, that must just be autocorrect. No, it's Kimba. No. Kimba the white lion.
Teese just doesn't know how to type.
But Disney also refuses to acknowledge that.
Oh, exactly. And that's the fucked up thing. Because once again, that's a case of, well, who has the bigger draw? Who has the bigger claim? It doesn't matter how many times it's pointed out, they'll still be silenced because they have more money and a more loyal fan base.
Hashtag get loud.
Hashtag get loud, baby.
At the end of the day, I think that's the sad thing about this is more often than not, legal issues are going to shake out to the benefit of individuals who have more money. Individuals and corporations.
Yeah. And I mean, even Addison Kane's publisher was like, we're done. Goodbye. We're not doing this anymore. Blushing Books was like, we're not dealing with this lawsuit.
Because it's costing them money.
Yeah. They realized how ridiculous it was. It was costing them money and they just stopped, you know? And I mean, I do feel bad for Addison Kane that she has to now face this on her own. But maybe it's high tide to just like settle this in claims court or something like that.
I mean, she's published several more books. There are 9 in like this series alone, which is the Myth of Omega series or something.
Zoe Ellis.
Oh, that's Zoe Ellis?
Yeah, that was Zoe Ellis, I think. That's what you were saying. The Crave to be Conquered ones.
Oh, yes, that's right.
That is
also, I think it's funny that they kind of have the same naming conventions.
Yes, and even
which,
the
like,
character names.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, that's the really wild part, right? But it's like, where's the A rendition? We have Born to be Bound, and we have Crave to Conquer. Where is Assigned to Alpha?
Ooh, that's a good one. I was going to say something to Absolute, if I could think about it. Absolute to Alpha. Bad. Awful. Never mind.
Assigned to be Asked. I want Chuck Tingle to write a book about... Has Chuck Tingle written any Omegaverse shit?
I don't know. I don't really keep up with the Chuck Tingle verse.
Chuck Tingle is a guest expert. Please.
If you know how to get a hold of Chuck Tingle, I've never
Reach
read
out to us.
single Chuck Tingle book in my life, but I will.
Our email is authorsnotepod@gmail.com, and our Twitter is @authorsnotepod. If you want to find more of my work on Twitter, you can find me at Valhethella, VALHETHELLA.
And you could find me on Twitter at Vicunad, VICUNAD. I'm also part of Fresh Podcast Market and The Reticulation, which is an upcoming LGBT journalism website that we are currently working on, a friend and I. Our theme song was done by James Yaiullo. You can give him a Google.
And our cover art was by Nyaliest. You can find them on Twitter at Nyaliest, NYALLIEST. Thank you so much for hanging out and listening. Next week, we're going to be talking about corporations and brands using Animal Crossing for outreach and some cool things that are happening via Animal Crossing right now in our pandemic-riddled world. Until next time, wear your mask, wash your hands, stay safe.